Hello everyone, this is Mr. Castrol. I'm out today, but here are the notes for the day. They are going to be about what is a cladogram. So the first thing I want you to remember, please open your definition sheet and your family tree worksheet. To do that, go to your Google Classroom, go to your classwork tab. They're the top two assignments in cladograms. So you're going to open this one, cladistics vocabulary, and you open it in Kami. And you're also going to open this one, family trees. And again, you'll need to open it in Kami. The questions. So the first page is the family tree, the second page is the questions. The objective question for the day is students will use a cladogram model to analyze the system of relationships between different species of organism. And the essential question is, how can a model help us understand the relationship between organisms? So notice that our CCCs are in green, system of relationships and relationship for systems. Our SEPs are blues, using models, and our DCIs, cladograms, and species are in orange. So think of this. I know you've seen this movie. It's called The Descendants. I want you to wait for a moment and think about why it's called The Descendants, and then tell Mr. Moy in the chat box, those of you who know. So what do you think descendant means? So I want you to go to your little box in your table here. Descendant is the fourth one. You're going to write two things. The first thing you're going to write is you're going to put a text box and you're going to write what you think it means. So do that right now. All right, please share your answers. Here is the official definition. An organism is directly related to an organism who lived earlier. So your father or your mother, you're their descendant. Now, it's good to keep in mind that you're not your uncle or your aunt's descendant. It's direct relationships. So, quick, share in the chat box, would your son be your descendant? The answer is yes, your son's your kid. Next question, is your mother your descendant? Again, put your answer in the check box. The answer is no, she is not your descendant, you're her descendant. Is he your descendant? Put your answer in the chat box. The answer is no. Your nephew isn't your descendant because he is not directly related to you, although you do have a common ancestor. You are not an ancestor descendant, but you are related. So what's the opposite of a descendant? The opposite of descendant is called an ancestor. Write down what you think an ancestor is in the box in your vocabulary chart. Now, here's the official definition. An organism that is directly related to an organism who lived later. So once again, we're talking straight generations. Grandma to ma to you to your kids. So is your grandmother your ancestor? Put it in the chat box. The answer is yes, she's your ancestor. She's your mom of your mom or the mom of your dad. Is your uncle your ancestor? Put the answer in the chat box. In this case, the answer is no. Again, you're not directly related. You do, however, share common ancestors, your grandparents. So what is a common ancestor? Take a moment, write what you think it means in the vocabulary list. Here's the definition. An organism from the past that is directly related to all of the organisms in a group. So take a moment to write in the official definition. Notice that all your boxes should have your guess followed by the official definition. So now what is the most recent common ancestor? Write your guess. The official definition is the first organism from the past that is directly related to all the organisms in a group. Again, take your time and write in the answer. Okay, so that brings us to what does it mean to be related? If two people are related, that means they share at least one common ancestor. Notice this means that every person, for that every living thing is technically related to one another. Maybe by millions of generations, but everyone is related. So now we're going to do some practice questions. Take a look at this family tree. It is in the family tree questions assignment. That is this one. All right, so we've got some questions. Again, we'll give you a chance to answer in the chat box. So look for Richard, look for Joe, and then tell me who are their two common ancestors. They have two. The two you should have found are Libby and Rose. Do you see how the arrows meet at Libby, but then they can continue on to Rose? Notice once you have one common ancestor, then all the ancestors of that person is also your common ancestor. Here's another question. So we know Libby and Rose are Richard and Joe's common ancestors. Who is the most recent common ancestor of Richard and Joe? The answer is the first one, Libby. She's closer than Rose is. Let's try one more. Let's look at Dan and Hi. Who is the most recent common ancestor of Dan and Hi? Again, you should have gotten Rose because that's where their paths meet. So how about Becca and David? Again, the answer is Rose. You can see that's where they meet. So what does this have to do with these cladograms I'm talking about? Well, a cladogram is like a family tree, but it's for all the organisms. Here's the official definition. Please write it in. A cladogram is an evolutionary tree diagram based on shared characteristics. Every group within a cladogram, you can think of as a family group, is called a clade. Please write that in under cladogram too. So here's a question for you, again for the chat box. Look at these three animals. Which two are you going to think is going to be closer together in the cladogram? So put your answer in the chat box. Which two would be related? You probably figured out it's the horse and the zebra. But take a moment and write in the chat box, why do you think that was your answer? So we can see, you should have probably said it's because of its body or its mane or its tail. So it has several characteristics that share. But notice when I wrote the cladogram, I've got three animals, right? And the reason that the horse and the zebra are closer together is because they have a more recent common ancestor, and you can tell it from their anatomy. So you can kind of see it right there, that they're all related, but the horse and the zebra have a more recent common ancestor. So now think about this. Where would you put the dog? Would it be, it's next to one of the animals. Would you put it next to the horse, next to the zebra, or next to the cat? Again, put the answer in the cladogram. You're going to have to think a little bit about this one. The answer is the dog and the cat. The common characteristic they have sharp canine teeth that they use for eating meat. So we call them mammal carnivores, although technically pandas are too, and they don't have, they don't eat meat. But that is the one. So notice that there's one group for horses and zebras and another group for cats and dogs, but that all together, they're in one bigger group. So smaller groups make up bigger groups. Remember we talked about that with systems, with groups and subgroups. Okay, so what you're going to do this week is you're going to make your own cladogram. We're going to talk more in detail about cladograms on Thursdays. You can do it, but right now I just want you to look up which groups animals belong to. And there's a way to do that. Once again, you want to go to your Google Classroom. You'll see there's a project sheet here, and there's project instructions I want you to read. There are some models here I'm going to show you in a second, but I also want to show you this research table. And what you'll do, you'll need to make a copy for yourself. So make a copy, but this is a Google Doc, so you don't need to open it in Kami. And then you'll see there are places where you can write information. So I wrote the first organism down, cat, Felis catus. You can choose it or not. I have it written here. I'm actually probably going to take it out for you guys, or you can replace it with whatever you want. So, but what I do if I want to do that is I go to a new tab, and I'm going to Google cat classification. What you see is there's a whole bunch of sites for that. You can't use Wikipedia, but I'll use this one, and you will see. I'll use this one. When I use it, I want to add a bookmark. I like using Google Bookmark, but you can use whatever bookmarks you want. I'll click the bookmark, and you want, so you know, you use a label, so I like to call this cladogram project. That way, when I'm going back to write my bibliography, which I'll teach you how to do on Thursday and Friday, you'll have easy access. Now notice it has 7 words here. Kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, okay? And those 7 words are all in here. So I can just write it down. I just know the words. Kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Carnivora, family Felidae, genus Felis, species Catus. Notice Felis catus, that is my scientific name, Felis catus. Now here, the characteristics that define that group, you can look that up later doing more research. Okay? Then the next thing you do is you look for another animal. So one more thing I want to show you before I do this is that there's one, but if I use this site, you can see that between kingdom and phylum, there are like 3 or 4 different groups. So you can start looking for smaller groups here too if you want. And that's going to help you make your cladogram later. But like, for example, see how Eumetazoa is under Animalia? So I can just actually write that down. For some reason, oh, I see it's over here. I can write under here, subkingdom Metazoa, if I want, and so on. And I can just also, I can obviously, once I make my own copy, I can copy and paste as many of these things as I want. So I would like paste 20 or 30 of them. I just didn't do that. I'll let you copy and paste. But the other thing I want to show you is that lets me now do dog classification. And again, there's all sorts of let's see. So you saw it's the same animal. So I could go back to the dog. I can go Kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, right? And there was class Mammalia, order Carnivora. So all those groups are the same. So we know that the cat and the dog are going to be fairly closely together, that they only break apart at the family. And that's why you're going to start by doing this research, because once you have this information down, then it's going to be easier for you to see how to make the cladogram. So that's what I want you to do until our next meeting. Okay, so back to our presentation. Okay, so here are the instructions for that. So I just wrote that. You can read it later. When you're done, your cladogram will look something like this, but it'll have more organisms, right? 5 is only good for a D. It can be like this way. See how that I have 2 groups, and then one of those 2 splits into 2 smaller groups? Or this way, where I'm just breaking off one at a time. Both of those are good cladograms. Here I put them together, and that's 10. That's a C. For a B, you want 20. For an A, you want 25. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is the metacog. So once again, that'll be in the fossils section. So you see metacog, and you see I have instructions for how to do the metacog, but I also have a model, so I'm going to open that up right now for you. Basic, you can read the instructions, but what I do is I write the question that I got wrong. Okay, I write what the correct answer was. Notice I'm writing all the words, and then what I wrote, and then I'd say why I chose this answer. Now notice for question 3, I did it twice. Each one I get wrong. If I get several parts wrong of number 3 and number 6, I want to do each part separately. And notice that I have a way, besides the reason, I have a way to remember. If you have trouble figuring out mnemonics, ways to remember, I have a file with a whole bunch of them I made up. Okay, so once again, your homework for tonight, you want to complete that answer sheet for the family tree. You're mostly done already, I'm sure. Again, your definition list for cladograms, you're probably mostly done. That way you can focus your energy on researching lots of animals and plants for your cladogram project and for doing your metacog. All right, exit question, and then Mr. Moy will let you go. If you did the cladogram again, where do you think the lion would go? All right, well, you guys have a good one. I'll see you on Friday.